Hello, this is Stalnaker with Hub Culture, and we're at the World Climate Summit in Durban, South Africa. Joining me now is Higgins, who is an international lawyer. And Polly is about to talk to us about a very interesting and potentially controversial concept that has been floating around here in Durban, and it seems to be making the rounds in various places. So tell us who you are and what you're up to.
I'm a lawyer who has proposed into the United Nations that we create an international crime of ecocide, environmental genocide, if you will. The reason that we're needing...
Sounds kind of heavy.
Well, heavy, yes, in one respect, but in fact, this is really about actually addressing something at the core and recognizing that, we've gotten to a point that we need to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, there's certain industrial activity that we really need to say no to.
They just no-go.
Exactly right, yes. And the beauty is by creating an international legal structure to do that, we actually pave the way for a level playing field for business. And this is very important because
this is almost like an eco war crimes.
Yes, it is. In essence, actually, already we have during wartime the crime that it is illegal to damage and destroy the environment over a certain size, duration, impact. But amazingly, during peacetime, you can do it all the time, and that's been normalised under the law of contract. So corporate ecocide is happening every day.
So in a war, there are international standards or guidelines about things that you cannot do in a war to destroy the environment.
In fact,
right?
It goes further than that. It is a crime. So under Article 82B of the Rome Statute, over a certain size, duration, impact, you cannot damage and destroy the environment.
But people get away with that in peacetime?
And in peacetime, what we're seeing is that corporations, because the number one rule is that profit comes first, is that what that means is you can damage and destroy the environment without consequence. So it's a legal anomaly, if you will.
Especially in markets where there are weak legal frameworks, I would suppose.
Absolutely right. And by creating an international crime, what happens is you create a preemptive obligation, a think before you act mechanism.
So what kind of things would be included in this sort of international crime framework?
It's not so much having a tick list, but it's in fact looking at industrial activity and saying, is this damaging, destructive, and causing mass loss of ecosystems? So for instance, unconventional tar extraction is a very obvious one. Deforestation is another one. If we can learn how to actually extract oil, fracking as well, absolutely. If we can learn how to do this without damaging and destroying the earth, then it would no longer be a crime. But at the moment, as it stands, we're doing an awful lot of damage and destruction, and morally, it is a crime. Just not legally, it's been made a crime yet.
So what would be the consequences, assuming that you could get this through, which we both know would be very difficult, especially given the corporate interest? Well, it'll be interesting to discuss that, but assuming you could get it through, what would be the consequences of such a crime?
So the consequences really would be threefold. First of all, what you see is the flow of money would shift very dramatically. No longer,
because you couldn't get the project funded to begin with.
Precisely right. So no longer would it go into the damaging industrial activity. The money would then flow into innovation and clean energy in the other direction. Secondly, what we'd see is at a governmental level, policy would no longer support subsidies for dangerous industrial activity, and instead subsidies and finance and assistance for that in the regulatory frameworks that are needed for the innovation, the new green technology that we need for the new green economy would suddenly be put in place.
Who would make such a law?
This is actually a very simple process. This is just an amendment to the Rome Statute. At the moment, the Rome Statute sets out 4 existing crimes against peace as they're known. So there's genocide, war crimes, crimes of aggression, crimes against humanity. So it's just an amendment to that document.
So so for those who don't know what the Rome Convention is, because I don't, what is the larger context of the document? Is it the Geneva?
No, the Rome Statute was put in place to set out the 4 international crimes against peace and also to put in place the International Criminal Court.
That was done after World War II?
That's correct. In fact, it was codified in 1998 and then put into practice in 2002.
Oh, so recently.
So it's very recent. All we're needing to do is amend an existing document. It's actually a very important document.
And what's the governing body behind that statute?
Yes, that's the United Nations.
Okay.
And the United Nations Law Commission governs that. And what it is one of the most important documents in the world because it sets out international crimes. We don't have many of them, but this is about putting ecocide up there with genocide. Amazingly, genocide wasn't actually a crime until after World War II. It was very disempowering to stand up and actually speak out against gassing of Jews and killing of ethnic minorities when in fact it had been normalised by laws in certain countries. In essence, we have something similar here today where we've normalised the mass damage and destruction of the earth. But there is a difference. Genocide was a crime of intent, whereas ecocide is a crime of consequence. We don't have CEOs sitting around a table rubbing their hands together and saying, what will we destroy today? Not at all. In fact, we have very good people engaging on constructive business.
It's much more about the system.
It is very much so. So this is not about closing down corporations. This is about actually closing the door to certain activity.
Why would a company want to support such a project or a political group want to support such a project?
Well, we're getting an awful lot of support for this because what we're seeing is that from the business sector, and in particular here today at the World Business Climate Summit, is that they're very frustrated wanting to move forward with innovation in the other direction, the clean solutions, but they just do not have that regulatory framework. So it frightens away investment. Venture capitalists just don't want to touch anything because actually it's high risk. Renewable energy is high risk because we don't know what's coming. Exactly. But when you put in place an international law of ecocide, what happens is it suddenly becomes no risk. And that's the beauty of it because actually you bring into the equation, instead of it being a risk analysis, it's a consequence analysis. No longer you finance the damage.
So we understand a little about who would be in favor, who would be against such an idea.
Who would be against it? Well, that's actually quite interesting because what we're seeing is more and more big companies are actually wanting to come forward on this and say we need, and we're hearing this very loud and clear here, they're calling on governments for this legislative assistance. I haven't actually heard words against this. If anything, what we're seeing is a growing momentum, especially in civil engagement as well.
I mean, who wants to promote ecocide?
Right? Well, precisely. This is about ending the era of ecocide. And where we have companies, even when we're looking at companies that are engaged in dirty energy businesses, they have a problem. They actually cannot move into becoming clean energy without getting this surety of investment, legal signal being given to them. But more importantly, we're hearing it very much from the voice of the people here. Civil engagement is very much engaging around earthrise. And this is about looking towards the intrinsic value of the earth. I mean, after all, at the end of the day, we destroy the earth, we destroy ourselves. And so there's an understanding, it's a widening of cycle of concern. It's not just our human right to life that we need to actually look at, but actually it's about looking after the earth's right to life. And just as your human right to life is protected by, on a one-to-one scale, the crime of homicide or murder, but on an industrial scale it's genocide, so the earth's right to life needs to be governed by the international crime of ecocide.
So the earth's right to life. Very, very interesting. Well, good luck in Geneva. I know you're going to talk with the UN about this next week, and good luck. And
thank you very much.
You know, the term ecocide, it's catchy, I gotta say. So looking at how this will start to populate into the public consciousness and into organizations thinking about what are the consequences, what is ecocide, is very, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure. So again, I'm Stan Stalnaker with Hub Culture, and we're at the World Climate Summit in South Africa.